In the village of Aya, there lived a prominent and wealthy family, the Essiens. Mr. and Mrs. Essien were large-scale farmers who farmed and harvested various crops and reared all kinds of animals. They also owned one of the biggest fabric stores in the local market, where the villagers of Aya and the people from other villages would go to shop for beautiful fabrics. Aside from being farmers and renowned business people, 50% of Essien's family wealth came from the generational wealth passed down to Mr. Essien from his parents. Because of their immeasurable wealth, Mr. and Mrs. Essien's house was the biggest and finest house in the village of Aya. In fact, anytime the villagers passed their house, they would stop and admire the beautiful exterior designs and pretty flowers that added beauty to the compound. Despite their wealth and success, Mr. and Mrs. Essien had only one child, a daughter named Akan. Because of this, right from her childhood, Mr. and Mrs. Essien pampered and spoiled Akan with whatever she wanted, and they cared for her with all their hearts. Akan knew her parents loved her so much and would always support her, so she grew up to be a rude and arrogant girl who looked down on other villagers of Aya. Unlike Mr. Essien, who was jovial to all and treated everyone with love and respect, not minding their social class, Akan was selective of her friends. She only loved to hang out with rich people who were in her same class or even better than her. Akan never related well with the poor people of the village, and sometimes, if she went out to the market and the villagers greeted her, Akan would ignore their greetings and keep her head up in pride. By the time Akan grew into a woman, the villagers of Aya were used to her attitude and the way she treated other people. Even though they gossiped about her occasionally, they still loved her because of her parents. Mr. and Mrs. Essien were very kind people, and they were known to be the most generous family in the village of Aya, who always helped the poor and always gave back to the village. Like every other woman, Akan reached the age of marriage, but before the suitors came her way, she made it very clear that she wanted the perfect man who would love her unconditionally and worship the ground she walked on. Akan's idea of the perfect man was a man who was richer than her, smarter than her, and someone who would shower her with money and expensive gifts. Because of these specifications, finding the kind of man she wanted was very difficult for Akan. Each time an average suitor came to ask for her hand in marriage, Akan humiliated them in the worst way and chased them out of her father's house. She would ask them, "How dare you come to ask for my hand in marriage? Can you even take care of yourself? Talk more of taking care of me. Look at your shoes and outfit. I'm sure the gold ring on my finger can set up a complete wardrobe for you and your entire household. I don't ever want to see you and your God-forsaken family in my house again." And with that, Akan would chase her suitors away with her harsh words. Years passed, and Akan waited and waited for the perfect man, but she couldn't find any. While waiting, Akan's parents became concerned for their daughter because she was not getting any younger. And that's when they began to advise Akan to find someone she liked and marry. They even advised Akan to look out for the inner qualities of a man instead of the material things he could offer. But Akan being the materialistic queen she was, refused to listen to her parents. 5 months after Akan's parents advised her, Akan met Akan at her friend's wedding. Akan was a wealthy and successful man who lived in a faraway village. He worked with the white men at the sea, and his job required him to be on the ship for months at a time. When Akan met Akan and realized he was the kind of man she had always wanted, she fell in love with him hastily. Shortly after they started dating, they married, and Akan moved to Akan's village. Akan also lived in a big and fancy house, which was home away from home to Akan. In Akan's house, Akan lived as a princess, just as she lived in her parents' house. Maids did all the chores and took care of the house. A chef cooked different kinds of meals, and literally every other thing was taken care of. Akan was an excellent husband to Akan. He would take her shopping for new fancy clothes, buy her expensive gifts, and treat Akan like a queen. Also, Akan loved Akan so much that he worshipped the ground she walked on. But the only problem was that Akan was barely home. Because of the nature of his job, Akan would travel for months, and he barely had time to spend with Akan. If at all he returned home, he would only stay at home for a week, then travel for months again. At first, when Akan saw this, she believed she could cope with Akan's absence, provided he gave her lots of money, bought her expensive gifts, and met all her needs. But after a year of their marriage, Akan realized that she couldn't cope with his absence anymore. The loneliness was eating her up, and she had gotten tired of sleeping alone in their big bed. She also realized that money, fancy clothes, and expensive gifts could not replace the presence of a husband. So, one day, Akan packed her bags and returned to her father's house. She told her parents she was tired of the marriage and would not return even if Akan came to beg her. And just like she had said, when Akan returned from the sea and realized that Akan had left, he traveled to her parents' village to beg her to return. But Akan refused, and that was how their marriage ended. Shortly after Akan left her first marriage, she met Eze. Eze was a small trader in the village of Aya who sold handmade shoes and bags. Though he didn't earn much from it, he was a very kind person. In fact, the very thing that drew Akan to Eze was his kindness and how he treated other people. Akan had seen Eze several times, and she said to herself, "Oh, he is such a kind man, and I would love him to treat me like he treats others." Without hesitation, Akan got close to Eze, and somehow she loved that she had more money than Eze, which made it very easy to control him. As time passed, Eze and Akan started dating, and they married months later. In the first few months of their marriage, marrying Eze was like a dream come true for Akan. Eze did all Akan wanted, and he treated her like a queen. He never talked back to Akan and never argued with her. Many times, if they had a misunderstanding where Akan was at fault, Eze would apologize even when he did nothing wrong, just to make Akan happy. It was almost like Akan was the husband in the marriage and Eze was the wife. And Akan seemed to enjoy the power play in their marriage. On his end, Eze tried to be a good husband to Akan. He would buy her cheap clothes and make numerous shoes and bags just to make her happy. About a year after they married, Akan got tired of Eze and his little income. So one day, she told Eze, "Eze, you are a kind man, but the problem is you have no money. And we all know you need money to put food on the table, not kindness. I have really tried to keep things going with you, but at this point, I don't think I can continue anymore." Akan said to Eze, and with that, she asked Eze to move out of her parents' house. Eze did all he could to get Akan to change her mind. He even promised to work harder and be a better husband. But Akan's mind was made up. Her parents even tried to convince her not to end things with Eze because he was a good man who genuinely loved her. They even told Akan to choose between a wealthy man who barely had her time and a kind man who wasn't so rich. But Akan refused to listen and ended things with Eze. The first time Akan ended her marriage, the villagers of Aya tried hard not to gossip about her failed marriage. But when they learned that Akan had separated the second time, she became the talk of the whole village. Whenever the villagers saw her, they would whisper and gossip in her presence, not minding if Akan heard them. Since Akan was very popular because of her parents' wealth, the neighboring villages who knew her parents also heard of her failed marriages. Weeks after the rumors spread to the neighboring villages, Nonso, a man from one of the villages, visited Akan in her parents' house. Nonso claimed to be a wealthy trader who specialized in exporting crops abroad. To show off his wealth, he brought expensive shoes, bracelets, clothes, and jewelry for Akan on the first day he visited, and Akan was thrilled to see him and the gifts. Also, when Nonso went to Akan's parents' house that day, he was so respectful to them and treated Akan like she was the only girl in the world. In fact, Nonso made it a routine to go to Akan's house with expensive gifts anytime he visited. And after months of doing that, he and Akan got married. This was Akan's third marriage, and she believed that Nonso would be the perfect man. Unknown to Akan, Nonso was a poor man in his village who depended on his old parents for everything. He had borrowed money from different people to buy those expensive gifts for Akan, and he even borrowed money to host their lavish wedding. Sadly, Akan did not know this until after their wedding. It wasn't until she followed Nonso to his village that Akan realized that Nonso lived in a small hut, didn't have any export business like he bragged, and had tricked her into marrying him. It even worsened when Akan learned that Nonso had come to ask for her hand in marriage just to win a bet he made with his friends. 2 days after Akan followed Nonso to his village, she packed her bags and returned to her parents' house for the third time. This time around, Akan was very heartbroken, and she could not believe that she had been tricked. She felt foolish for letting Nonso deceive her like that and for using her to win a bet among his friends. One day, after her third failed marriage, Akan was reflecting on the things that had caused her to leave her marriages, and then she realized that she was the problem all along. She had allowed material things to cloud her judgment and focus more on what a man could offer her than the man himself. Coincidentally, that same day, while Akan was reflecting on her past, her mother called her for a discussion. She advised Akan to stop ruining her reputation by walking out of all her marriages. She told Akan that the perfect man was only real in folk tales and fairy tales, and that if Akan really wanted to last in marriage, she had to compromise and work on being the perfect wife too. For the first time ever, Akan did not argue with her mother or walk out of her mother like she always did. She sat there and listened to everything her mother said. From that day, Akan changed into a better person. She no longer looked down on the other villagers and began to act friendly with her neighbors and even the maids who served in the house. Luckily for Akan, life gave her a fourth chance in marriage. Roughly 6 months after Akan turned a new leaf, she met Mensa. Mensa was a man from a distant village who recently moved to the village of Aya. He was not rich and didn't have the fancy things of life like Akan. When Akan met Mensa, she instantly fell in love with him, but she insisted on being friends first. 6 months after their friendship began, Mensa and Akan got married. This time, Akan did not treat Mensa like she was better than him. She treated him like a king, cooked for him, and accorded him his respect as her husband and the head of the home. In return, Mensa showered Akan with love and did everything to make his loving wife happy, and the two lived happily ever after. Though it took Akan 3 failed marriages to realize that she was the problem, she was glad to finally last in her marriage.